HTKB, HTKB, HTKB. This is the house that Kamurai built. Time to get started. Today I want to talk about some of the problems we have in government with free market and capitalism, and I thought I'd do a small demonstration here. Let's go ahead and say that we have, let's say, 10 entities that control or are involved with most of the money. But these are more of a percentile over here than anything else. So if we have 10 entities all with an even percentage, everyone should start out with 10-ish%. So let's go ahead and give them their monies. We now have green, which is common citizen, blue, which is big business, and then we'll go ahead and leave purple as other. Now we're going to look at this turn by turn, and hopefully it'll make some sense. So let's say that 3 is paying 1 and 2. Let's say that 6 is paying 4 and 5. Let's say that 9 is paying 7. Let's say that 10 is paying 8. See, businesses are paying wages to all their employees, their benefits, all that, whatnot. But now the same employees and whatnot of these companies have to go back and spend into the market. So they're going to end up spending as much as the companies can get away with charging. In this case, let's say that that is 10%. Now this step, much more have gone into business 3, 6 is not as prevalent, 9 is not as prevalent, and 10 is obviously stealing some of the business from them. Let's go call that small business. As you can see here, this leaves everyone lying low. Now even if we continue, let's go ahead and do the same thing we did essentially and distribute accordingly. Now at first glance this would seem that we've evened out quite a bit and that businesses are actually suffering, but when we go to the next trick, see the money is piling up higher and higher. Now if we were to just consider these all businesses and X out residentials, then we could definitely take this a bit more lenient. But realistically, we're dealing with capitalism, which is a natural entity, and you've got to view it as part of the market, or you've got to view it realistically as part of the market that we live in. Now, with credit involved, then we would be able to keep floating things and whatnot, and that's kind of how we've progressed. But if we are realistic about what needs to happen, this is what happens. We shrink down because the others have to be eliminated. Now with this shift, you can see that big business has started pooling the money, and that the residential has a very small amount. Now 8 still being paid by 10, or 9 still paying 7. This is essentially the problem that we have going on. This is a very, very simplified version. But the problem is that big business, and that includes the government at this point, is stacking the money. So even if, let's say, 3 buys 6, and let's say that 9 buys out 10. It happens often enough in our market. We have this problem. Now how do we get the money back out of the big business to the residentials? Big business can pay the residentials more, which isn't going to happen because they want to increase their profit margins. Alternatively, they could lower their prices and make less money per purchase. Then eventually it evens out. But neither one of those cases are happening. For some reason we think it's okay for price gouging to happen here. And that's essentially what a free market says, is that I can charge whatever I want. I'm not saying that the demand and the necessity for items shouldn't be taken into account. But I don't agree with a free market system like this where companies will unnecessarily gouge prices and cause inflation. The fact of the matter is the money needs to be redistributed. I wouldn't care if it was redistributed within a free market, but we somehow are preventing the redistribution. When those big companies were about to fall out and we did government bailouts, no, the companies should have fallen and the other companies would have picked up the slack. They should have hired in some of those workers that lost out from the failing companies. Product should have gone down in price because they weren't having to compete with the other companies anymore. Now in my suggested system, there's really only 2 parties. There's the residential populace and there's government. If we have a government-ran market where everyone who has a job has a federal job essentially, do a much more thing like something like this. Now this amount would vary on demand, but let's go ahead and just take 25%. That puts money back into the populace. It's about even between, but the only place for the populace to spend the money is back to the government. And if we're paying a balanced wage, that should end up being. I understand wages or demand for practices and wages will fluctuate along with costs based on supply. I'm not saying take out these basic principles, so there'll be some room for fluctuation in there. But at any given point, it should be on its way to about 50% of the money being in one place and 50% of the money being in another place. People like to argue that this doesn't make a competitor's market, that it makes shoddy product. But if you're paying people specifically to come up with better products all the time, how can we push this? How can we make this better? What's the new technology? You continue all the same practices that you do now, innovation remains, and you end up with quality products. So the key is motivating people to continue to work at a quality pace. And that's where you come up with a system where they have to work in order to do it. You can get rid of welfare and SNAP and all that other garbage, and you make people work, or you give them an option to come in under a specialty system, and that will motivate people